going to be episode 30, season 2. I'm about to do my makeup. I'm playing a little bit of music. So I want to invite you all to hang out with me this evening. This is a little bit earlier than some of my other shows, but like I gotta get up in the morning, so I don't really feel like doing a later evening show. So I'm hoping you all enjoy this. I know for some of you, it might even be during your like drive home. Hopefully you've actually already gotten home and are then eating dinner or enjoying it now and maybe watching this. I don't know. I know that the show gets at least 100 views when it's live. This last one, a little bit lower number, was like 130, and then right now we're up to usually around 200, 300 though per show. Hi Pepe, thank you for calling me your friend and sister. Mexico, Tamaulipas, Victoria. Okay. Thank you. Oh, you feel like you're late? You're not late, Pepe. No, I'm happy for anyone who tunes in when I do these live. Oh, well. Problem with live filming is that I'm actually doing this right here. So if I knock over the stand, then the camera moves around too. I'm about to do my makeup though for anyone who's watching. I mean, people seem to really like the live shows with the music, and we're gonna get into it tonight. I've got some really big news about what's going on up here in Michigan, and Pepe, I'm not sure about that last comment, but I can't keep reading them. So, anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and start doing my makeup so we can get on with the show. Remember, I'm on OnlyFans at DeborahDeborahky. I've been waiting for a while. I haven't done like a special video since like probably February, so there's going to be some new special content coming soon. You can ask me about it on there. I do get requests for stuff, but this show is very specifically marked on YouTube as not being for kids, but occasionally people from under the age of 18 will get on here and start trying to be part of the show, so I'm not going to detail a lot about OnlyFans on here. But anyways, so for special requests, you can go to OnlyFans. I'm probably going to be starting Simply Yoga with Deborah on there pretty soon with the bathing suits and stuff, and then I'm also going to be doing, I don't know, if I have time, I'm hoping to do an experimental series on there called Simply Dance with Deborah Erotica. That's usually something I'm kind of good at, and I don't really feel like giving any more free dancing. Like, there's so many different artists and people that like to use it. And I know we were having fun kind of with this last thing with, like, what was it? Kelly Sweeney and JoJo Gomez was the winner, and Kelly Sweeney was, like, number 2 behind her in Interpreting Sports Car that I wrote for Tate McRae and then didn't really get credit for. And my weird underground competitions, like... I mean, there was some really funny stuff. Like, there was a guy I found online, a South Korean man, that had to put together a really good dance troupe number, and I don't want to name him because my critique of his work, the reason why I would have made him like a number 1 or number 2 winner was he didn't go fast enough. The only thing about JoJo Gomez and Kelly Sweeney is they both pretty clearly used my choreography ideas for their interpretation, which makes sense. Like, it means they're students, but you know, it's like it's something I just have to know because you know how crazy people are sometimes, right? I mean, you know about what happened with the trafficking. Because part of what I went through the trafficking situation was that I kept dealing with a number of agents at Endeavor that were yelling at me because people were using my stuff, and I was just literally out there teaching and having my life and living and doing what most artists do and trying to pursue medical school and nursing, and then went through all these bizarre events. It was just nasty. And they kept complaining because other people use my stuff and saying I owed them. And I was like, well, I don't owe you anything because I was out there teaching. I was just living my life. Like, that's ridiculous. And even the U.S. government said it was ridiculous, and a whole bunch of other interest groups said it was ridiculous, and people use, basic human rights groups. To understand that Endeavor is a Russian and Chinese corporation that actually doesn't even belong in the U.S. is a whole other conversation. Just hold on. So. I'm just going to get into reading some basic news that's kind of a big deal right now. Yes, on OnlyFans at DeborahKay. Hi, Joshua, North Dakota. Nathan wanted to know if I do OnlyFans. Yes, I'm on OnlyFans at DeborahKay. I'll put the link in the comment section after the show is over. Ooh, I need to skip that. I got an ad playing in the background. So, anyways, I'm finishing my makeup here. I'm gonna get into some other stuff. I mean, unfortunately, when you're talking about what I went through, is that I was basically being beat up on people that turned out to be the FSB of Russia and the U.S., but they also are called El Tren de Nicaragua, MS-13, Jalisco. That's really what's running the entertainment industry in the U.S. It's not the real entertainment industry, but like Hollywood, like your Hollywood freak people. It's why there's this huge anti-celebrity movement now. And it's important to sort of ingest all of that so you can understand what goes on, like some of the supposed shows, commentaries you see. Like TMZ likes to do a lot of what's basically legal coverage, but they're very stealthy about it. And that's my free ad for Taco Bell, because everybody uses them to say they're running for the border, right? Border Patrol. So that's my free ad for them. Anyways. Because a lot of it is actually border issues. Most of the people that you think of in Hollywood that turn out to be criminals do, but CA has a bunch of people that are actually also at, yeah. No, it is. Taco Bell is making a weird resurgence. They're doing a bunch of specialty items, like specialty cheapo items, meals, and then like so is McDonald's trying to McDonald's already redid their stores up here. I think Taco Bell's thing up here, I don't know where you guys all live, but they're closing down a lot of their sites and opening new ones, like down a block, and trying to make everything like cuter and newer. So good for them. You know, like local economics here. But yeah, I mean, a lot of our people that are actually illegal immigrants that came over in the 80s that don't belong in the U.S. at all, and then due to failed policies on border issues, they're here. And, you know, frankly, in fights with people, and people go through, like, what I went through, where you hear about, like, you know, the Jeffrey Epstein case, where, or, like, what we're going through with P. Diddy. Like, P. Diddy and Epstein are not from the U.S. They're actually from other countries, and horribly out of touch with U.S. values and ideas, and even our legal system. And nobody ever hardly talks about it in the news, because our news networks have been totally run by people from Russia and China or assets, or people that are just totally scared now. And maybe it'll get better, and maybe it really won't, but it isn't something to sit around and worry about. Part of the reason I make the show is because I was trained in journalism and broadcast news, and ended up not being in any of it because I'm not going to serve Russia or China. And, you know, I actually have contacts at like 60 Minutes and some of the other major networks, and people who really way up there to back up what I've said or I'm saying. Of course, I told you all about the long sort of journey and odyssey I took going through all these different churches and investigating like temples and Muslim mosques, you know, so Jewish temples, churches, mosques, and realizing that there were just simply too many of the gangs who were from the Russian FSB, which would include El Tren de Nicaragua, MS-13, Jalisco, were actually hiding out in religious organizations. So, you know, as a country, we've had to confront like raging issues in, you know, what's supposed to be our religious organizations no longer being safe, and them engaging in trafficking and child trafficking. So it really sucks. And so tonight's show, I think the big thing right now is that what I know is like really, really big news up here that people are excited about is that Governor Whitmer did a meeting, Michigan's governor did a meeting with Donald Trump, and he has now pledged new F-15X fighter jets, EX fighter jets for a base outside Detroit in Michigan. So it's going to be 20 new F-15EX fighter jets for the state, for a base here. Not here in Northern Michigan, but I mean, it's going to be near Detroit. So it's like huge news locally. Whew. Do you all like the music I'm playing? I'm doing techno right now. The problem is that I'm not sure I want to use any more White Claw mixes. Those, I realized somebody reminded me that they were probably from someone that I don't really like down in Charlottesville, and it doesn't seem like a good idea to try to placate. I think Patricia might have made some of those, and I don't think it's a good idea to try to placate her by playing them. So let's do some other stuff. So just to try to remember, like, Katy, not really from the U.S. A lot of the Hollywood elite celebrities not really from the U.S. Hi, Amanda. Orhan Porkra says, hi, how are you? I'm doing well. Getting the show in here, putting some makeup on for you all before we get into the rest of it. Already into the really big announcement about the Michigan fighter jets. I think that's going to be, I'll look at it in a second, what base it's going to be at officially. I saw like the weirdest, most news obscuring message about Governor Whitmer having to deal with Trump to get those jets done, and like, there, you know, there's this bizarre article talking about how she ran for president, how doing the jets was gonna like ruin her chances to run. She's gonna have like Governor Chris Christie when he was like nice to Obama after Hurricane Andrew, and I was like, this is a completely off touch article. Like, she's doing what a lot of people do when they want to get contracts into their state, which is, you know, to meet with the appropriate person. I mean, is the governor of California now worried about his life because he met with Trump after the fires in Los Angeles? Like, people, it's really normal for leaders to have to meet with someone over whether it's like a tragedy or a contract or anything. It's kind of part of the job of being in the political world. I actually never understood why Chris Christie got in trouble for that, except I think, not Hurricane Andrew, it was Hurricane Sandy, sorry, Hurricane Sandy in New Jersey. That had more to do with them, I think that had to do with a bunch of people that just didn't like Chris Christie, if anything, so. Anyway, so there's my eyebrows. Look like permanently surprised. And, you know, a lot of the show is kind of about what I go through as someone who's been, I mean, I guess the way to put it is I've been a model and a beauty queen and an actress here in the U.S. And I'm somebody that decided to leave all that behind and wanted to go on and work um, in actual industries that matter and dealt with actual stalking issues. Like, you know, I was thinking about it. Like, I just got approved to be Miss Michigan for a pageant. I can't afford to be in it. And it would have cost $300 just to enter the pageant. I don't have that extra money. I'm poor. So, you know, a lot of it is that if, just to give you an example, with the beauty pageant industry in the U.S., like if I can't do a pageant, they say, okay, cool. Hollywood's very weird if they run into you. They try to make bizarre demands on people, and it's very obvious that they actually just need to stop it. This bizarre attitude of entitlement being from other countries, like we don't really care where in the world you're from, but this craziness with constantly demanding that everyone provide you things for free, and the bitchiness and the entitlement, and also literally being from other countries, it actually has to stop. And a lot of it has stopped, but more has to be done because they're just totally out of control. There's too many of them up here, and I don't want to hear from any of them at all. Like, I just don't even want to see any of them. So, and the fact that I'm like trying to go to work and making a living, and some of these people are still engaging in stalking behaviors. I mean, my technically ex-boyfriend tried to come by where I was working recently, and I just ignored him because that's the way I was taught to handle it. But I mean, it's just ridiculous that he would expect anyone to even acknowledge him. You know, he's just this dumb loser that doesn't pay his bills and is violent. He's just a dirty gang member that I didn't even choose. I was trafficked in the relationship. I'm not even sure he's calling a boyfriend. But you know, that's like life in America, right? Modern life, it's quickly weirdos and the rest of us are just, you know, I'm poor. I don't even know where we're living in 2 weeks, people. Like, the place I'm living at got bought, so I'm gonna have to look for new housing, and I don't know where I'm gonna find any around here. And I can see that I'm getting, like, there's a lot of people who already noted that, just in the community, we can see that there's a lot being strewn around with housing ads, that prices are falsely inflated and not realistic to the market, and you know, we try to look for places to live, and it's obviously like just weird settings to make it look as if we're, you know, like everything is not for the prices that are being shown. Well, I'm going to show you my outfit. Here we go. And then I have my green socks on. And then if I get cold, I can go like this. So, anyway. So let's talk about Katy Perry. Because in the last episode I discussed that she turned out to be actually, you know, let's go back to labor trafficking stuff for just a second to get this out of the way. So Valeria is a character I actually created. One of the guys I work for was like, don't worry, I'll get you a Coke bottle with Valeria on it. Will that be enough? And I said, no. And he actually tried to say to me, this is ridiculous. He said, well, you were like that when you were a kid. I'm like, you mean when I was 5 and I had like no choices? Because adults literally need to be paid for their work, and putting a name of the character they created on a bottle doesn't make them any money. This doesn't do anything for me. And it's not considered a form of evidence to hold in court either. It's just dumb. So, I'm gonna throw it out. Good job, Auntie. You're funny. I'm in northern Michigan. It's really cold here. I just want to note, getting more into the show, this is the first day of May. It's also Beltane. I saw a ridiculous meme today. Apparently, we're all supposed to be getting really upset on Britney Spears' behalf and playing only Britney Spears in May, and we're all supposed to be so upset because of Justin Timberlake and what he's done. And what did we all come to as the resolution of this? Because Justin Timberlake finally got arrested for drunk driving and had to, I don't know if he did time or what, but he finally got arrested for it. I just just want to make sure I'm all really clear. I literally decided, and I talked to other people about this research, and went through the whole process between the Thought Project, Just So You Know, until now. Like, going back a couple years ago, I think the thing about Britney Spears is that she was paid to look very trashy and felt really rejected and dumped by Justin, and he just sort of rode off into the sunset with Jessica Biel, right? And he's a Russian, he's a dumb FSB guy, but so is she. Britney Spears is very much an FSB person. She's with Endeavor, and I think she's been abused a lot, but as another friend of mine put it, who was in public relations, he always thought she was just covering things up with her breakdowns and running around, and she was just another drug dealer. And I don't know if it's that or she's just totally mentally ill, but the reality is that Jessica Biel, Justin Timberlake, and Britney Spears are trash. And when it comes to your life in May of 2025, don't post anything with them. It's going to be May meme is like 15, 20 years old. Like, it was done in the early 2010s. Get with the times. Be modern, people. But as far as Britney Spears needing revenge or whatever, I think she's pretty clearly got it. Like, nobody's going to argue with her or have a problem saying that Justin Timberlake and Jessica Biel are trash. Because they look like trash. They're trash. They're trash, Britney. They're trash. Unfortunately, you also look like trash at this point, too. Trash I feel sorry for a little bit, but I went to offer you money, and you and Justin both actually owe me money for work that you've never paid for. And I don't think either one of you are worried about where you're going to live in the next month, so I think the last thing any of us are going to do is bother playing your songs to make you more money over your weird manufactured fight. All I have to say about that. I'm sure you both hate each other. I'm sure you're both trashy enough to have big fights and spoiled enough to think we should all indulge you and play your songs and support you, but the reality is that I have to actually work for a living. And I actually have a ton of work to do all the time. And I don't have time to play songs in support of you. And nobody has time to play songs in support of Justin. And if somebody does, they're probably a loser. That's pretty much it. You basically have to be a loser. People preserve your integrity, preserve yourselves, but they don't get back into yourselves. Stop those people. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, I get it. She had the baby. She miscarried. He was rude 20 years ago. She thought herself as being really hot and deserving of it. Of a loving relationship with him. She's sorry she lost it. He looked too good. She's a little irritable about that. But, I mean, this is a woman that literally lip-synced songs that I sang and was threatened with being murdered over and was beat up over. And she's never once apologized to me or anybody else that was trafficked for her. And neither does Justin, so I think we're all just well off saying all three of them are trash. That's pretty much it. She pushed it a little too far with trying to start a campaign for people to feel sorry for her now. Like, her moment was when she had her book out, right? Let's talk about the strange case of Shannon Sharpe. I don't get Shannon Sharpe's situation at all. I don't get it. I don't understand. Hi, Rosie. You're calling me mommy. This is so cute that some of you are like calling me mommy and auntie. So Anthony Edwards is apparently okay. Let's look at this for a second because I don't get it. Shannon Sharpe. No, I don't get this at all. It's a really weird story. By the way, you've heard my theories before that I'm never really sure about the guys who have to. I'm never sure about the predators who get exposed in public as being predators compared to all these other guys. I'm looking into one of those in a little bit that have gotten away with not having to say anything or not, like they're not on page 6. Like Shannon Sharpe is stuck on page 6. So let's see. Page 6 says Anthony Edwards viciously mocked Shannon Sharpe after taking out Lakers. Timberwolves star Anthony Edwards used Shannon Sharpe's world to troll ESPN personality after Minnesota bounced the Lakers out of the NBA playoffs in Game 5 on Wednesday night. Okay, so somehow Shannon Sharpe is now being made fun of as a tie into the NBA playoffs. Okay, so what I'm getting out of this is that Shannon Sharpe has this weird situation that doesn't quite make sense, and let's talk about who Shannon Sharpe even is, because you may be like, who? The fuck? The fuck is that? Ah. Who the fuck is that? Yeah. Um, who the fuck is that? Like, because you don't watch TV all day, right? You have to work for a living. Duh. Okay, so Shannon Sharpe was a commentator for the CBS at Central Broadcasting Sports pregame show, the NFL Today, including spring halftime part of the Subway Post game show. He's a former professional tight end who played 14 seasons in the National Football League, primarily with the Denver Broncos, regarded as one of the greatest tight ends of all time, and he ranks third in tight end receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns. Oh, he's from Chicago. Ew. Please don't come up here, Shannon, but if you promise me you won't see me if you say anything, don't say anything, and I won't say anything if I see you. I know this is a place where they really won't talk to you at all about your life, so a lot of people with money come up here from Chicago. They drive up on their boats within like an hour or so, and then like go home again, and nobody don't bother them at all. But June 26, 1968, 56 years old from Chicago, Illinois, and 6'2". He was part of the Denver Broncos and the Baltimore Ravens, who had a pretty bad reputation. They've had some cute guys on teams, haven't they? Flacco. Sharpe's situation is that he apparently had a BDSM relationship with a woman, and there's been all these weird conversations released, and I've been waiting. Let's see. Let's do a different song. I don't know. YouTube's gotten really worried. Just to stop for a second, I'm going to try to break down Shannon's situation with this BDSM relationship, because apparently he didn't have an NDA, which means he didn't have a non-disclosure agreement. And so this woman is releasing all these phone calls, and TMZ is playing them, and I don't know who else might be playing them. I'm just going to see if her name is out there. So I don't see a name of this woman who apparently has accused him of rape, and there's been a lot of really weird stories with him like trying to pay a settlement for like $50 million, which apparently he's not being allowed to pay. She's being called Jane Doe. So, and then there's all these weird phone call conversations coming out, which I've actually taken some time to listen to. And here's what I'm going to tell you. This person sounds an awful lot like Fatina, whom TMZ ran an interview with where she pretended to be one of the women from the P. parties. Maybe she was, but she dressed herself up very much like an Iranian. She's actually Albanian. But here in the U.S., she tried to pretend to be a U.S. citizen, went by the name Kendall, and then also went off and, she actually broke into a house and went up here and, raped me over the winter and then got beat up, so it's really weird. But this woman sounds very much like Fatina on the phone calls, the cadence of her voice, the way she talks. So I'm going to say this person is rushing up this beat. It's very much a setup. And then his rush, she's supposedly 19 years old. And a number of men have already come forward and said they don't understand what he's talking about because he's supposed to have an NDA. She's a 19-year-old, he's a 54-year-old, so it's a total no-go. Here's the problem. It's not exactly normal for those kinds of conversations to be played in a show. I myself went through a number of weird situations, and the conversations I had with people were not played on shows. And for anyone else to analyze publicly or give feedback on. Oh, by the way, just since I couldn't actually be in the Miss Millennium Christmas competition, I was officially named Traversity Miss Christmas and then couldn't pay the money for the title. I bought myself a Christmas ring permanently for my middle finger. So anyways, oh, hiya, Dov. What I'm saying is I'm not 100% positive this is Fatina, but it sounds like Fatina. And that's the kind of crap she would do, is pose as a 19-year-old. TMZ would actually be able to tell you whether or not this is actually Fatina that set him up, because we don't know for sure this is really a 19-year-old. So I appreciate all the men who've come forward and said, let's be really supportive of her. What's he doing as a 54-year-old with a 19-year-old? What's he doing with no NDA? And it's a BDSM relationship. And I would agree, there was no such thing as a BDSM relationship. that is going to work out. I know some of you might be into kink. There's just no such thing. Somebody's going to be unhappy with that. Somebody's not going to like it. Use of signet systems. What I'm wondering is, because you have to have complete evidence that she's a 19-year-old. So I would be very circumspect about all of it, because this sounds like an FSB setup. And then there's the fact that he tried to pay this $50 million already and was stopped from doing that. So it sounds more like blackmail. And then a possible terrorist group, because that's what you're talking about when you're dealing with Russian FSB. Because that's, domestically you're into El Ticonderoga, MS-13, El Jalisco. And, here's the other thing that's a real red flag about her behavior with the potential settlement or trying to get one, is that if he's actually an offender, then she has to press charges. She can't just be asking for money by the U.S. legal system, because she can't just have that. She's got to press charges. And so right now, until she presses some charges, until this Jane Doe presses some charges in the courts and the legal system, she's just saying she wants money for a sexual relationship. I mean, what is she doing? Like, does she need to file, like, a labor claim? What is this? Because is this like a buildup to try to find her way to a Department of Labor, like, wage claim? Like, I don't understand. Because there's some of us who have been, and I'll talk about myself in a little bit, who've had some really serious problems and didn't get paid for work. And because the government's still trying to figure out what to do, because we don't have contracts or anything. She apparently has contracts and paperwork, so she could actually make a request for wages lost for work, and that's totally reasonable. But when the guy gets into wanting to do a $50 million settlement, that sounds like a man who's being terrorized by a terrorist organization. And then, of course, the U.S. government and everybody else and all the other interest groups, and, like, that's when the English government, like, you're going to have MI6 up your butt, like, what's going on? Because that's too much money. And if he's a verified sexual offender, he has to be charged for that. So, and I'm not saying this to be mean or to be helpful or be unkind. I'm saying I haven't seen anything in the news that actually covered this cohesively. Because this is the reality of it. So, just a little nuts, people. Guys freaking out, and there's a few too many people rushing too readily to say, oh, she's a 19-year-old, and what's he doing with a BDSM relationship? And it's like, well, people do have really weird relationships. They cost too much, people. BDSM relationships just cost too much to try to engage in. There's no such thing as a safe one. And certainly not legally. Not in this country. And not with all the weird, we have all these weird FSB women that are constantly trying to set up cases. And I'm just telling you, this woman sounds an awful lot like Fatina. And Fatina is not a 19-year-old. She's a 50-year-old woman. So before you rush to, like, jump on Shannon Sharpe, I'm going to go back to, she needs to file charges, not be asking for money. If there's a labor wage claim, she should file for that. And she can. And she obviously knows where he is to do it. So file for your wages lost, honey. But the whole thing with this other stuff is just weird. Like, we're right on our way, actually, to her being charged for something. So, because there's some, you could do fraud. There's a lot of other charges you could put on her. Something I need to go back to, and this is actually kind of important, is that, so honestly, whatever happened after my last show, I must have really tipped somebody off, because there was an acoustic harmonic attack that came through the whole area, and that was for the Russian military. So I don't think anyone could be more excited about the state landing more military aircraft contracts to be here, because we need help. Like, we're getting acoustic harmonic attacks and the Russian FSB through here all the time. I'm exhausted, everyone else is, and they were so bad over the summer, and it's really all over the U.S. And yeah, Dad says, I miss you, dear. Aw, can I see your outfit today? Yeah, I already showed my outfit. I'll show it to you again, though. If you all don't understand what acoustic harmonic attacks are, it's a really high-pitched frequency, noise that comes through, and it's just like not really fun. And they do it a lot of times at night, and I don't know why the U.S. government hasn't figured out how to stop them, but it's, I mean, even the people I knew at 60 Minutes, my contacts there, so they were tired of it as well. And most of the time the media is afraid to cover them because the U.S. media is afraid to cover them because they don't want to die. So, but that's what it is. I spent years researching it myself after having lived through it, so. Lived through it with having to wait until the age of 39 to get a protective order against the people that were actually from the Russian FSB that lived freely and very violently here in the U.S. And unfortunately, there's still a lot of them here. And they founded, El Nicaragua and Venezuela. We have El Jalisco and MS-13, so it's just very hard. Yes, I have shorts too on my channel. I need to go back and cover one more. So remember I told you about how, and I know I've gone through the story before, but I just want to review. When I was in Janesville, like my senior year of high school, was at the Gordon house. That's an actual name of a couple. And they were getting a divorce, and I was having a really good time talking to their son. He had a younger sister named Erin, who's a really sweet person. Oh no, wait, this was my junior year of high school. And because I went to work at a restaurant like right after that with the sister. And I was having a good time talking to the son, John. And all of a sudden, Wilhelm interrupts us, and his dad was there, Bob, and said, would you two like to make a movie for us? And we said, no, we're just completely shocked. And Wilhelm said, well, yes, and the dad's saying we have to get you away from him, blah, blah. Wilhelm said, no, he said he was going to traffic me, and he said, just watch, and he knew another family he was going to take me to in Pennsylvania. Invited me a couple years later, and they ended up going by the name Livingston's, and frankly, that was how I met the ludicrous model who married another woman by the name of Megan Sees, who the U.S. government is still after. And I have no idea what's going to happen to that family, but I mean, I told you about the weird ludicrous model thing where he raped other women at Juliana. I mean, his wife for FSB, still KGB, probably at this point directly tied to Nicaragua. And people of the U.S. government, wants to deport or imprison. I mean, I would think model, so-called model, he had a contract in Endeavor. If they can catch him, will be on the way to El Salvador to the Supermax prison. That's where he's going to have to go. So, and he also attacked the guy on the Detroit Lions this year and cut the leg, right? Remember that back in the fall? That was him. So I don't know when they're going to catch him, but that's where we're headed with this. Like, I really was in the middle of a whole bunch of weird crap. And Endeavor as a company was literally just one big terrorist group. That's just all like El Jalisco, MS-13, El Nicaragua, founded by people from the Russian FSB, which is actually the KGB. We can keep going through this. I'm reviewing it so people don't get lost. But what I want to get into, though, was that couple in Janesville, like that Easter, the sister Erin and I actually got on really well. And I guess in a lot of ways she was probably similar to me. But I think she was murdered eventually after being trafficked for a long time. Very pretty, way prettier than I am. Like perfect face, perfect hands, perfect feet. And I thought about her family, and then her mom actually told me that she hated her. Her mom, Paula, ended up being brainwashed by Cersei and ended up trafficking Erin. And then I thought Erin had this really great boyfriend and was going to go off and get married. She went to the Navy Cross and was supposed to become a physical therapist and was supposed to have this great life. And then ended up, apparently I found out later, she was trafficked to death. So she ended up maybe she survived, but I think what happened is that she died eventually. So she didn't disappear right away like Laura Rollo, but nobody's ever seen her again. And she's one that I think now is pretty much convinced died. I haven't been able to find a person whose image she looks similar to in the industry. So she didn't have her image stolen, but that's just like, because I bizarrely had this idea that she had this wonderful life and, somehow escaped everything. That turns out that she ended up being worse off. What I will say was similar between Lauren and Erin and I was that we were all considered to be very pretty and also we were gifted in the sciences. And we're going to be in healthcare. obviously I had less opportunities than them. But, you know, I've lived through some stuff that's been incredibly strange, which is why I continue to make the show. And I've lived through a lot by, you know, there's a lot of things I just don't do. And, of course, I've been labor trafficked a lot. So, I do have an Instagram. It's at DEBORH_Corey, COREY. We're going to get into some other stuff that's come out this week. Just got to go through this. The Detroit Lions just added a new player. He's 6'6", and he is part of the National Player Pathways program from Australia. He's a rugby player, Laki Tassi, and he's 24 years old. So he's going to be a new player in the Detroit Lions for this coming season, which we'll have to wait all summer long to get to. So don't get too hyper about it because we really just barely finished the football season. That's for the cold weather. Yeah, I just want to remind people, like, I still get picked for beauty pageants today, and I would have been Miss Michigan in another pageant coming up, but I didn't have the money to be in it. The pageant system never gets mad at me and tries to traffic me for not being able to do a pageant, or demands that I owe them anything for being attractive enough to have been in it. They literally just say, that's sad, you know, maybe another time. And I am still, for the record, in the pageant, or whatever you want to call it, the Maxim online contest. But I think the Maxim cover model competition, icon competition, is all kind of a joke. Also, I decided I don't really want to go to New York or Miami. They have a new one, though, now called the Elegance Competition, which I think I'm going to do, where you can get a trip to London. That might be really fun. But I don't think I'm going to take any of this stuff to Maxim very seriously. And I've also decided to stop making ads for them. Because I'm not getting paid for that. So I just have to go back to focusing on stuff that actually makes me money. Because I'm not going to spend a bunch of money on Maxim just to try to win something. So, and you can actually, if you want with those competitions, literally just buy your way into winning and go on the trip. So. Okay, so let's get into some other stuff that's kind of heavy here. People keep flipping out over Bill Belichick's girlfriend. Here's the reality about Bill Belichick's girlfriend, who's supposed to be 26. If you look at the pictures, you can pretty clearly see that she's photoshopped and she's a child. I know this because I was forced to be like the so-called wife, and I called of a guy in the Hollywood industry when I was a kid, and they took all these pictures of me out with him in public. And they photoshopped them. And they also made fun of me a lot. Like, this was back in the early 80s, or no, late 80s, early 90s. We're excited to deal with people from his company trying to badger me and trying to lie about my age and trying to pretend like I wasn't actually a kid and that he wasn't a pedophile. He's very obviously a pedophile because that's all he prefers. He only has relationships with other people who are willing to have him traffic individuals. He's supposed to be a Hollywood agent. He's like 67 years old now, so. I want to go into this with you. Okay, so Katy Perry, this is really nuts. So you know that she was on the Blue Origin flight, right? Or not flight, because it didn't really happen. Like, the whole thing is fake. And she spent the whole time, like, basically making fun of women in science and astronauts. And maybe it can be a dude as far as I'm concerned with the way she's acting. And she spent a lot of time prepping this with Lauren, who's actually, I call him Larry Sanchez because it's a dude. And it's important to understand when you look at this that, you know, the pictures of Blue Origin are all Photoshopped, and that she's not really someone who's sympathetic to, I would not be sympathetic to her on any level. But what's interesting is that, as another friend of mine who's a lawyer put it a couple weeks ago, we're all just done with Katy Perry now, finally. Because I was questioning her a couple of years ago and saying, well, maybe she's going to be the one that finally does a Taylor Swift, or maybe she's going to do this or that, and it turns out that she's just another weirdo. And she's part of El Jalisco, and her tour lined up directly with El Jalisco locations in Mexico, and where the FSB has fusion centers there. So that's all you need to know about her. Now, what you need to understand about this whole Blue Origin fiasco with the fake pictures and obvious stuff to do labor trafficking, because and with the same group of people that engaged in labor trafficking um, with Jeffrey Epstein. Which is why I warn people, say you don't want to go on a Lord and fight. Like FLIGHT. Here's the point. She's not someone who has been very thoughtful. And by that I mean, in 2020, she purchased a mansion from a man named Carl Westcott. He's an 85-year-old veteran. And she had him evicted from his Montecito mansion. And then he wanted to back out of the deal because he was not stable enough and had a back problem and was on painkillers at the time. And then so she evicted him. Where she tried to pursue a lawsuit against Westcott for the purchase price, along with Orlando Bloom, so now I hate him too. And his family has filed a countersuit. So what you're going to get out of this, what you need to understand, is that she's the kind of person who evicted an old man from his home, took over the mansion. I doubt he'd want it back now with whatever she's done to it. Like, it's not going to be a good place for him to live. And now it's trying to sue him for the cost of purchasing the mansion, which means she's basically an ugly bitch who threw an old man out of his home who was a U.S. military veteran, only to then demand the cost of the home and her purchase money back. Never seen anything so disgusting and trashy in my whole life. Like, and what I'm trying to understand is, why is Katy Perry not facing criminal charges for her behavior at this point? Like, why is Westcott being left and his family left to do a countersuit and struggle with weight and cost of that? Because what I've seen and what I refuse to put up with in the system is that there's a tendency to want victims and individuals to carry all the weight. And it really isn't up to us to just wait for the system to charge someone, when in reality, Katy Perry should have been charged for all this. And they do mean criminal charges. So, unless that's something that just haven't been brought to light yet. But I don't see any reason why she wouldn't have. I worked in home health for 5 years and I have a security clearance, and I can tell you that a number of my clients, a number of my clients have those similar problems and were able to avoid being evicted. So I don't understand. I'm just trying to understand what's going on there that she hasn't been charged for this. Because to me, that seems like it would be a really easy charge to make. That you could definitely file some criminal charges against her for this. But yeah, that's why we're all done with Katy Perry. Everybody's done with Katy Perry. Get it? Just get it, got it good. Like, knot it up. We're all done. Nobody cares if her shows look bad. She just needs to go away. Just go away. Go away. Nobody likes you. Just go away. You're gross. She's another weirdo from Endeavor. She's got the weird relationship. I think she's a dude. I know a bunch of you at Endeavor are really big on trying to make snuff films and trying to figure out who's a girl or a boy. Obviously, these days, you could totally make one with Katy Perry, Larry Sanchez, Aisha Delille, let's go something Nicole Scherzinger, J-Lo. Probably men. I mean, that's what you guys like to do, right? Like, make weird snuff films with people and try to figure out whether they're a girl or a boy. Secretly with them. Because the rest of us don't have anything to do with you. I mean, Katy Perry, Beyonce, Taylor Swift, what I call Lauren and Larry Sanchez, all massive traffickers. Not worth your time. By the way, there's some really weird footage that's come out of Beyonce's last. Okay. It's supposed to be the first show in her Cowboy Carter tour, but it shows fans coming out and being so miserable. They're like punching each other and freaking out and fighting. I will say that a lot of them look very nicely dressed in some really cute Western outfits on. So that was nice to see. But it's a huge problem when your fans are literally punching each other after your shows. Like, it means they're really not happy. And whatever's going on in them, like, remember I told you that she's Iranian and she spends a lot of time trying to make people angry? She's definitely pumping people up to be angry at those shows. It's not cool. We finally recounted on the show here because I couldn't cover it in my blog. You know, you see double.com got like 600,000 hits a month. Oprah did some footage recently of hugging Nicole Scherzinger in New York, who is in Sunset Boulevard on Broadway, covered in fake blood. Nicole Scherzinger was covered in fake blood and was going around hugging Oprah. It's just a reminder for me because I actually knew Nicole, who went by the name Aisha Jaleel, down in DC in the 2000s before she launched. And I told you about how there was a night that I and RuPaul were out with her. RuPaul was dressed as his normal self, not in his costume. She's a Buffalo Bill person, and out of Endeavor, and a terrorist, and was literally, he's also a dude, and was literally creating explosion. Like, I was out in the street in DC with, you know, RuPaul basically, and she was screaming and exposing her fake breasts and penis. And the cops didn't know what to do, whatever. Like, they couldn't decide whether to laugh or what. Because I said, "What are you doing?" They said, "Well, this happens all the time. This is the DC cops all the time." 2003. And that's how not scary it was under George W. Bush. It was just totally unsafe and weird. It wasn't any different than, like, Indonesia or some other country that has attacks just constantly. And I looked at RuPaul and I said, "What should I do?" I said, because RuPaul's really big. And he's a pretty tough guy. I said, "Go ahead and run her from the side, pick her up like a linebacker, and pick her up, and let's just get her out of here, because she can't just lay in the street and scream and signal to do explosions," which is what she's doing. So he did it. I'll never forget it, like watching him run from the side, pick her up, and turn her off. And I don't know what the cops were going to do with her, but she's nuts. And it's just amazing to me that she's still free, and she's like over in New York performing on Sunset Boulevard. Like, that's in Sunset Boulevard. That's enough for me to not want to go to New York. In fact, all of you should avoid New York. Ideally, should you? Cleo is there with Nicole Scherzinger? No. No. Mm-mm. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm going to go through this because I know I've only vaguely discussed it before. Apparently, as of Monday, April 28th, 2025, Amal Clooney is preparing to divorce George Clooney. She is also a lawyer. Yeah, she's called a barrister in the English system, and has pressed charges in the International Criminal Court against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, which means that despite the divorce, due to U.S. policy that Trump's administration has said, she's not able to enter the U.S. So I find it hilarious. But she mainly lives in France with George. He's just currently in New York. The 61-year-old man, George Clooney, an actor, goes by the name George Clooney, currently living in New York because he's doing a show there on Broadway. They also have homes in London, Lake Como. It should be a $500 million divorce if she can collect it. She has skipped the premiere of his newest show. She's only going to be able to make it out of the marriage and out of this without getting herself into more trouble if she doesn't Mila Kunis and simply divorces him. This can't have the $500 million. Here's the problem, and I forget this, and then I have people who stalk me over this, and I don't remember this crap. Oh my God. When I was in my early 20s, I had a lot of problems with being picked up because of Epstein and his stupid people. And that includes it includes a large group of people from Luther College in Iowa that are tied to the U.S. entertainment industry in Hollywood. They're actually from the U.S. They're all immigrants from Russia, China. They're all like Russian FSB, Chinese CCP, Albania, Iran, and they've all like been in the part of forming MS-13, Alexander Nicaragua, Jalisco here in the U.S. Don't ever talk to me about any of this in person. You can end up in prison, frankly, for it, because there were too many of them. I lived through like rape after rape after rape after rape, and I mean, I was literally at one point being picked up and just carried around DC by some of them, and I couldn't get a protective order against the main couple that started it until the age of 39, and then I still have to deal with problems with their affiliates, Patricia and Fatina, still trying to bother me, and coming up here even. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that Fatina's stated goal as an Albanian radical for the FSB of Russia, or the KGB of Russia, was to destroy the U.S. And she's now a pop performer and travels all over singing stupid pop songs, and she's a total Nazi. But all 4 of them were state members of FSB. They also turned out to be people who started trying to Nicaragua in the U.S. And one of them turned out to be pretty much Venezuelan. I think that's what happened. But George Clooney is also very much somebody who looks Venezuelan. Now here's what you have to understand about me. Kendrick delivered me to him at one point, and I had to put up with him. I played it off very well, but he raped me. And at the time, what I mostly remember was having to show my boobs to him, and he was explaining to me that he basically raped me because I had to go through with allowing him to have sex with me, and I just have always said, well, you know, I showed my boobs to him to get out of the situation. So basically, I did what a lot of women do. I was stuck in a signet system, and Kendrick and him told me that I would be killed if I didn't put up with it. That because they were using remote satellite systems to control victims and traffic people. And that's what Epstein was ultimately guilty of, is creating a remote satellite system to traffic people and having them stuck on signet systems. Killing Epstein, putting him in prison, the fact that he was tried in the FISA court was a big deal for the US government and for actually other developed countries that are against labor trafficking and slavery. So why I don't make a big deal out of it is because I wanted to live. And he's unfortunately, you know, George Clooney is someone who unfortunately used CICI, Booz Allen, Labod, and Accenture to get away with continuing to rape and beat people. And it's not that he really wants sex or even dominance. George's money has come from just porn after porn after porn, and even snuff films with both men and women, and people who didn't get paid for any of it. And I was one of the people I didn't pay, so I was labor trafficked. He used me to make a bunch of videos. He sold them, made a whole bunch of money off of it. Never paid me for work, and threatened to kill me over it. And what the U.S. government's move was to use to cut off these dudes from picking me up and making films and not paying me, and also, of course, the threat, the torture, the personal violation. That's what it is. So the point is that he used a long list of people to make films and sold them and didn't pay them for it, and then under threat of killing them. And they didn't have the right to say yes or no to any of this. All any of us could do was try to play the whole thing off and survive, for those of us who lived through it. And it isn't really about being attractive. I mean, he's part of that group that, you know, your dumb white party society that is a bunch of Nazis from, basically from Russian FSB kind of groups, whether it's Jalisco, MS-13, or from Nicaragua. And that's with Kendrick. And unfortunately, I had to sit and listen to him talk about how he's planning to get married to a lawyer, and he was one of these people, much like the actor, what's the other actor who did this to me too? Sam Elliott, unfortunately, I know him, who very much said, you know, the thing needs to do to get me out, like he's a little better at this kind of stuff. He's married to a family that, well, said he's going to introduce me to in Pennsylvania, and like the son's basically on his way to being sent to El Salvador, to a prison. You know, that's where we're at. But, you know, George is very much the same attitude, saying, well, we just gotta get away from Sergio. So a lot of traffickers that dealt with it were a little more sophisticated. You know, they weren't necessarily so mean overtly. Less cruel. Maybe you would say less, you know, they weren't gonna like punch you in the face. They were just gonna tell you the truth that they could kill you. And if you're me or any of these other people, you know it's true because you knew what those systems were doing. You've seen it, you know, after all the years of seeing my mom abused and everything else that had happened, and seeing her finally die, my father being killed. You know, you didn't have to tell me that my government was losing a war against slavery, and based on technology from Russia. So one of the lies that George used was, you know, we just gotta get away from suicidal home. Well, the reality is that Amal Clooney is a horrible person who has no interest in human rights, and I have to laugh at them getting a divorce because I have to laugh and make fun of her because it doesn't really surprise me at all that she hates Jewish people, considering that her husband did nothing but rape Jewish people to make porn films and even some snuff films, and then made a whole bunch of money off of it. And you know, all any of us could ever do was just testify and move on, and then hope the U.S. government could figure out what to do with it, because he's going to have to be charged at some point. But with her behavior, I'd say charge her too. You know, we could skip the divorce and just charge them both. But if she's going to get stupid about money, with any of us who survived or with herself, then it might really be time to, consider charging her with something as well as him. Because I had to deal with horribly difficult situations that people were literally following me around the DC area, maybe even today for all I know. One thing the Russian FSB does is they get on signal systems and bother people. And they'll get somebody with dementia to follow you around and stalk you and then make rude comments and act like it's something they can use in court. There's nothing to be used in court. There's nothing to be used in the U.S. court. And there was also a tendency for someone to just freak out, like I told you about Ilka Johnson in Arlington County, who was just being completely crazy and going on and on about how great George was. And if I ever said to any of these people that I didn't like him, because it would happen, I just wanted to forget about him, which most of the time I did. And two, they get really offended. And so it's really more the Russian FSB and these other terrorist groups that get so angry about, they raped somebody like 20, 30 years ago. The person doesn't give a fuck because you can't give a fuck if you have to live. You have to pay your bills, have to have housing, have to have medication, education, a job. You have to do all this stuff as part of living your life, and you're just not going to bother with them because they're not worth it because it doesn't benefit you financially, right? They get really pissy about that because they're nuts. They're psychotics. Came back up again when I tried to go to Georgetown. There were people there who would harass me about it on behalf of the terrorist groups. This is actually something you need to remember. Because it's not actually acceptable to get pissed off at somebody else for having been raped or abused. Like, nobody chose this stuff. George Clooney picking up male models or female models and raping them isn't the model's fault. And it's a ridiculous hypocrisy on the part of the Russian FSB and some of these other groups that they would try to harass the survivors of it, which is what it is. Anyway, one thing that you could possibly say, even on George's part, if you were trying to defend him, is that a number of these so-called groups that were actually tied to the FSB itself have made his situation worse. Because I don't discuss this stuff with anybody ever remembering. Now, Cersei was constantly obsessed with winding down a lawsuit to collect money, and there wouldn't be a lawsuit. If anything, I would be owed, me personally, be owed money in lost wages. So I could make a lost labor wage claim if I felt like it. I don't think it's worth it because all I have is what would be called the hearsay and people who saw some of these events in Washington, D.C. Now, felony charges in court, if the U.S. Department of Justice would like to get off their butts and actually charge him with something and also charge her with something, a mall, that you could do something with. But you can also use this show right here for that, too. The fact that there was a whole bunch of us that were raped by him very publicly in Washington, D.C., New York, L.A., Miami, and there's all these videos of us. The Department of Justice can do something with that whenever they want to. They're not, for whatever reason. And that's what I'm really questioning about this administration. It's like, you have all this material. You have all these witnesses and victims who've done what they were supposed to do as your citizens about it. You're not doing anything with it. And the rest of us know it's because they don't think they have enough military support or manpower to actually carry these events out. Because George is pretty clearly part of the Russian FSB military, right? Which is why all these dumb defense contractors tend to be fired who turn out to be Russian FSB or Chinese CCP or part of El Tren by themselves. Because that's actually what the problem was. That our U.S. government was partially taken over by people pretending to be defense contractors. They were just storks from Russia. That's all you are. You're fired. It's been a long fight. And I would just again say, I think Amal Clooney is actually a man. So, you want to make a snuff film and see who's a boy or a girl, like the way I was threatened, other people were threatened. Well, go ahead and make one with her. But don't talk to the rest of us, because we don't care about you. I think she's a nasty labor trafficker and a liar herself and a man. And I don't really care what happens to her, but I definitely don't think she deserves money. The money all came from labor trafficking other people who haven't been paid for their work, myself included. But there's a long list of people that he hasn't paid for work. It's also important to try and understand that George has spent a lot of time trying to set himself up as a good guy in the media that's been, I guess, apparently bullied and frightened of him because of acoustic harmonic attacks put together by the Russian FSB. And he clearly relied on Cersei and Wilhelm for support now that they're no longer able to support him. You do have some traction Department of Justice or some other group to actually take him to court. We got those charged with press. So. And you stand up. Thank you, Subrata. Jack Hughes says hi. Thank you. You have to remember, for me, I was fine with the concept that Hollywood was just for people of Russian ancestry and to not work in it. But that I've spent like decades, I wanted to work in healthcare. Somebody from the Hollywood industry injured my back, so I couldn't go on and be a home health aide anymore. That was Susan Bass, who was Wendy Williams' producer. Currently is responsible for beating up Wendy Williams. Yeah, Susan Bass. Mm-hmm. And then I took her to court and got a protective order against her in Alexandria. And then it's also important to know that, I've had problems with employment myself because Georgia's people spent time harassing and stalking me after he had me raped. So, it wasn't enough to rape me and make a video of it and sell it. He's continued for years to harass and stalk people. He's not a hot man. And the fact that I was actually involved in a relationship, because my ex that goes by the name David, and also calls himself Chris, is an actor who spent a lot of time wanting and demanding I watch movies with George Clooney and then harassing me about it, which is part of the reason I got away from him. Thankfully, since he lied about his identity, his birth certificate, I was able to just simply divorce him for fraud, which is actually the hardest type of divorce to get in the US. The reality is that I do not have enough money and support to file charges myself or do anything else with it. And I don't have anyone to protect me, and I don't have a lawyer or anyone to advise me how to actually file charges correctly, and I don't have any way of getting them done because I don't have any money. And I'm poor. And I spend all my time and energy working on survival. Food, shelter, housing, medication. Yeah. It's been a pretty bad situation for those of us who survived it all, and I wanted to be a nurse. I didn't care about any of it because I saw how worthless Hollywood is, that it was just a bunch of perverts. So, and frankly, I wrote today in my journal, it's like, stupid world, I have to put up with dumb people who want to demand that these dorks hang out, or that any of us be forced to hang out with them anywhere in the US. That's what I said about it all. Yeah, Amal Clooney's trash. And a dude, I think. The only way she's getting out of that marriage is if she pulls a Mila Kunis and doesn't ask for the money. I gotta tell you about something else that's going on up here. There's an article, first of all, Kash Patel is being investigated for flight plans by the Democrats in the Senate. I need to remind everyone the FBI has been severely downsized. And it's important to know that supposedly the FBI wants the UFC to become involved in training agents for the FBI. Notably, the FBI switched all over to signals intelligence and doesn't actually do ground agent training anymore. Also, it's become a severely small agency and is under the purview of the Department of Defense. So I'd be curious to see what the Department of Defense is going to want to do with that, because that just sounds like a plan to, well, the UFC is part of Endeavor. There were all those fights where all those women were murdered. They'd forced women to fight actual men and then pummeled them to death and killed them. There's a lot of labor trafficking. So it sounds like the FBI has decided to investigate the UFC for those violent murders. Because that's what it is. Right? When you tell a woman she has to fight a man and she's pummeled to death. The case in this area is that they were very dependent on J worker visas. I did interview a number of them and worked with one last summer who actually was raped by the man who's gone by the alias Scott Zazak. They all turned out to be people with medical backgrounds, they're medical students, and people who obviously were part of the Mizrahi Jewish population, even though they had darker skin, and were pretty clearly brought in Russian signet systems and really brought in by people who were from Russia or the Chinese CCP to work for them up here. It was kind of depressing. I think it might be kind of hard for people who've worked in organizations that were dependent on them and didn't know about all that. The J-Worker Visa program was shut down by this administration. So hopefully you're not somebody who was super dependent on them. totally exhausted after this show. This might be one of the hardest shows I've ever had to make. Yeah, this week I ran into a couple of women that were handing these out. Somebody from the Russian FSB is into distributing these up here. It's fake money with Donald Trump's name on it. And the back has a bunch of propaganda. It's Russian FSB propaganda. I asked one if she wanted it back, and she gave it to me, but she basically very strangely warned me that this man was like pressing this stuff on her. It was probably propaganda. But she didn't ask to get out of it directly, so I don't know what she was doing exactly, but I don't know if she was playing it off or if she really believed in it, but the way she looked to me was that she's like signaling, like, hey, this guy's, bothering us, he's handing out the propaganda. Because this isn't, I mean, like, I can't imagine Donald Trump wants, like, weird fake money with his face on it and, like, this stuff on the back that would turn people off on him, so I just can't. The guy was totally FSB, it was just, ugh. And then I think this might be the opposite. This is like a Nourishing Minds event, cooking culture and connection for people who want to hang out at the local library. There was some other Russian FSB material distributed up here, which was anarchist. That was supposed to be really far left. I just threw it out. I tried to go find some today, but I didn't have time to pick up anymore. If I find any more examples of that, I'll show you. This would be like far right Russian FSB propaganda to be divisive, polarizing stuff. So we're just gonna get rid of that. Anyways, so let's play some music and we will get out of this show. I just want to thank you all who participated in the unofficial contest to do choreography for Sports Car. Some of the stuff was really cute. I posted a lot on my page, and I feel like we've gone through total. It's been a really long show. Okay, so I'm going to sign off. This has been over an hour-long show. This is me, Deborah K. And have a good one. I'll see you again soon.